club, a community that asks the question, if there is some greater purpose, some greater power, how do we communicate with him? With the man who's been doing that for years. He's the guy that knows. Dr. Trin, welcome this morning.
Hey, good morning.
Letters to God is premised on one simple thing. Are we really alone? I think that's the gist of what we're trying. Was it really too silly to write a letter to God? Is there anybody listening? And if there isn't anybody listening, are we really alone? And how does that make us feel? Because today's topic is loneliness. You know, is it good for you? Is it bad for you? When's a little loneliness appropriate? Or are we just frightened like little children to be alone in the dark here?
That's a great question. And here's something I want to pose to you. Sometimes we can be surrounded by people 24/7.
Yes.
And yet feel alone.
Isn't that true? It's so weird when you're alone in a crowd. Yeah.
And then there are other times when we truly are alone
Right.
all the time. And does being alone necessarily mean you feel lonely? Or does the sensation of feeling lonely, is it dependent on being alone, or is it dependent on being around tons of people and yet feeling alone, right?
So here's my answer to that. Maybe I'm onto something, or maybe this is how I deal with it. I think it has to do with how connected you are. If I'm in a room full of strangers, I'm at an airport and I don't know anybody there, I'm at a crowd. If I'm not connected to them in any way, an airport's a perfect example. We're all going some other places. We're just there. It's just the gathering place to get on a plane. None of us are talking to each other. None of us know each other. We're not there for any shared mutual purpose. We're not listening to a concert. We're not sharing something together. We're just passing through this choke point all at the same time. And so it feels very clogged and connected, but very disconnected to everybody. So I could be very alone. I could feel sad. I could feel frightened. I could feel angry. I could feel all the things that come with being alone. Nobody's listening. Nobody likes me. I'm all by myself. But if I'm connected, I'm at a concert and we're all there for a purpose. I'm there, I hate to say it, for a political rally. So I'm there for some shared experience. And that then feeds off each other. We're all looking at each other and we're all sharing. And somehow we come this greater whole. The same thing when I'm alone. I used to say when I was a kid, my dad was always working. He was the typical successful business dad. And yet I always felt connected to him. I knew that if I needed him, he'd be there, even if he wasn't there a lot of the time. It sounds strange. So he was absent a lot, working, gone, traveling. But I didn't feel, maybe it's what he did when he was there, I don't know what, but I somehow felt a love or a connection there to him. I didn't say, who's this stranger that's in our house here today? I haven't seen him in 2 weeks. There was something there that connected us. And so even when he wasn't there, I didn't feel alone. I still felt like I had a family. Now, there are many people who in their own family feel alone. These people aren't my family. I'm not connected to them. I don't like them. They don't like me. So if you break the connection, then you feel isolated and alone. And I'll tell you an example, last example of this. So I'm an only child. My mom and dad have died. And my dad was an only child, so there wasn't much there. My mother had a sister who never had any children. She died. So she did have a brother who had a couple of kids, so I have a couple of cousins. But I'm pretty alone in terms of family. The connection has been broken. And if I didn't have my own family today, wife, daughter, a couple of grandkids, I would feel I'd feel like the last of the Mohicans, the last member of the tribe. And I still feel that way sometimes. So because the connection to my family, my family is gone, my parents are gone, maybe it's a better way to put it, I don't feel very connected anymore, and so sometimes I feel very lonely. So does that make sense? You can
What
be
does it?
physically alone if you still feel connected in your head.
Yes. What does it feel like to be alone or to be lonely?
It's
Is
the
it
most
a
frightening
sense?
thing in the world.
Is it? Is it? I can only imagine what our patients who have been locked up in their homes because of the pandemic, and especially our older patients
Yeah.
uh, must feel like over this past year, the sense of loneliness and not having that social
And I'll
support.
tell you what it, let's see if we can, we'll ask your audience to break it down. What is loneliness? Here's loneliness for me. Loneliness is feeling that no one cares, no one
Wow.
loves you. No, you are in it alone. There's nobody to support you, to help you. There's no social interaction. There's no, I can't talk to anybody. I can't laugh with anybody. I can't do anything together. I'm in a spaceship, locked into my own little spaceship, traveling. I don't know where. I don't know why. I can't get out. And it's a feeling for
No
me of
purpose,
being trapped. You,
no purpose, aimless.
yeah. Loneliness is trapping too. That's the word that always upsets me in my life. Whenever I feel trapped in a plane, I get panicky. Whenever I feel trapped somewhere in a job, I get depressed. Whenever I feel trapped in a relationship, that feeling of hopelessness, you can't get out. There's nobody listening. There's nowhere to go. That to me is the ultimate. Uh, that's
There's
hell.
been a Yeah, there's been an increase in suicides
Yeah.
over the last year because of the pandemic, and I suspect a lot of that is from folks who are locked up and lonely and feel like there's no way out. But are we? How do you? Is it just the lack of connecting with another human being? Is it the lack of connecting with maybe your creator? Is it a lack of just feeling like you have purpose or the lack of purpose?
For me, I would say loneliness, the core of loneliness is in the word. I am alone, which means I am not connected. It doesn't mean I'm not in contact with. There might be
Right,
people around me, but if I'm not connected to them in any way, shape, or form. For example, let's say you've traveled overseas.
right.
If you go to a country and you don't speak their language,
Yes,
um, do you feel alone in that world? And it's only when you start to communicate and to connect with them, you help them, even if you can't talk to them, you give them a shot, you give them an exam, you do something. Now you start, and they smile and they look back at you, and you start to feel some some connection, some
right.
bond. But if you just walk through country after country, imagine you're just an international traveler, and you went to that same, all you did is see people at the airport, and then you went to the hotel, and then you went back to the airport, and bit by bit you're disconnecting yourself from the world here. I gotta feel at some point you feel alone, and that is a very discomforting feeling for us, not just because we're social creatures, but because I don't know, we're just afraid to handle the whole thing alone. This whole ride, if I took you and put you on a desert island, a Robinson Crusoe in the famous novel, which was based on a real case of somebody who got shipwrecked, I think off the coast of South America on a deserted island, and lived there for 2 years or something by himself until a
Right.
ship stumbled by and said, "Oh, you're still alive?" We thought everybody died when that ship went down. Um, that idea of, and I think it leads to a certain madness. I remember great episodes of. There's one. I'll take you back. Did you ever watch the Twilight Zone?
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, yeah.
Twilight Zone had all these, madness. And there was one where a guy, an actor I actually knew, Earl Holliman, was in this early episode, and he's an astronaut, and he wakes up in a deserted town. And he's got the suit of an astronaut on, and he's like, "Well, where am I?" And he walks around. There's nobody here. Hello, hello. And bit by bit, he starts to go mad. And I'm going mad. I got to have somebody. This is crazy. Where am I? Why am I here? And I'm all alone. And finally, they realize, at the end of the episode, they wake him up, and they realize he'd been in a test to see how long. I said, "Poor guy, he's been in this room for 6 months. Well, we've
Right.
been trying to test and see how long man can survive alone in a room, like, because we're going to send this guy to Mars and he's going to be on a rocket ship for 2 years alone. Can people take it? And in this case, he didn't. He started to go mad. Just his mind playing tricks on him. I'm in a room. I'm somewhere. I I never forgot that episode because to me that's loneliness is you're trapped in a hollow world. And maybe that's why I have to feel there's something beyond, that there's a God, that there's somebody that I can reach out to even when I'm physically alone.
Yes, I I remember during my days of boot camp
Yeah,
with the Marine Corps, where I've have felt very alone, and 18-year-old kid graduated from high school on a Friday, and then on Sunday was in boot camp in the Marine Corps, right,
right.
down in San Diego, and knew nobody, felt absolutely lonely. Here you are, 18-year-old kid, with a ton of other 18-year-old kid. These drill instructors were yelling at you, chewing you out.
Mhm.
You know,
Breaking
I
you down, breaking down your
breaking you down
individual.
emotionally, right?
Right.
Breaking you down
It's
mentally,
the whole purpose.
and that's so the entire purpose was to essentially break you down, and
So they can
and
rebuild you as a unit, as an organization,
build
as
you
a
up as a Marine, as a team.
right.
And so the only thing that saved me during that 3 month of boot camp was really my internal inner conversations and letters to God.
See?
Right.
Uh-huh.
I was able to write, just these little, I had like a little, I don't know, a little journal that at night when we were getting ready for bed, I just wrote a letter to God every night,
Really?
and it really helped
What would
me.
you say? Would you just say,
I
I don't
shared
know.
my day. I shared my day. I shared everything on my mind, my concerns, my hopes, my dreams, how bad the day was, how crazy it was. We hiked this, we shot this, we did,
So who did
war.
you think you were communicating with? I mean, because if is a God, he knew all this. He or she knew all this and saw all this. Why do we have to send a letter to God and say, "Here's what happened today"? I was there.
Yes, because love and relationship is a two-way communication street.
That's it. So now you
And
hit on another key thing. It isn't just feeling connected. You
yeah,
have to have some communication. And
yeah.
that's the problem with God. I don't hear you listening? You out there? No, didn't hear anything. Let's get God on the show today. God, come on in.
Yeah.
No, God didn't join us today. At least
Yes,
not.
Paula, can you be God today? I see Paula's coming on here. Just but
Yeah, I mean, think about it. That sounds silly, but that's this whole point of this show is so we send a letter and send it off and hope that somebody reads it. We are, and so are we doing, did you do that for you? Did that make you feel better? Or did you have the illusion that somehow you were communicating with God at that moment?
however, whatever the effect was, I felt connected.
Yeah,
I felt connected. And whether God was reading my letter or he already knew what I was going to write or whether he's there or not, right? I actually
yeah,
felt connected. And it actually allowed me to survive boot camp without feeling alone.
there you go.
Because every night I wrote a letter.
So aloneness is lack of connection.
Lack of
And the way you generate connection is through communication or a shared experience. You can be in a crowd and we're all watching the wonder of the something. I don't know. Pick some
right.
magical event that happens. Uh, I don't know, the ocean or something. We're watching all something together here.
The
We're watching
Olympics.
an eclipse of the sun. That's what I was going to say. Something dramatic, and none of us has to say a word, but we're all in that room together. We're all in that physically sharing that moment together. Look at how, in some ways, mass media has been great at that. We have all shared the grief of 9/11, even though very few of us were there. Out of 300 million people, how many of us were physically affected by that? But we were moved by that. We were moved by dramatic things like the death of President Kennedy when I was a kid. Everybody mourned. Everybody felt it personally. And then on other moments, Super Bowl Sunday, half the country's watching, and for a moment we're all lifted up, or some great inaugural address, or something. There are a handful of these things that bring us together virtually, and yet we all feel very connected to that
Shared
event,
experience.
shared
Yes.
experience.
Yes. Like this morning, I was reading that America lost the gold medal in gymnastics.
Yeah, right. This
And I was like,
young girl,
ouch,
Biles or Bills or whatever her name is. Yeah,
because she stepped down.
yeah,
She kind of withdrew.
yeah.
Right? Simone, I forgot her
I think it's
last name.
Biles or however you say
Yes,
that. Yeah.
yes. And I was like, ouch.
You
That,
felt it.
that I felt it. I felt it. And maybe that's the connection, that social media has given us, the joint connection. But at the same time, social media is a driver of loneliness because we
Completely.
have lost the ability to actually connect with a real human being. We're on social media. We're all, you know, sending out Instagram messages and Facebook messages.
It's changed the way we communicate, that's
Yeah,
for sure. I no longer listen. I might think Dr. Tring's an idiot, but I didn't say it out loud. Now on social media, I go, "You're an idiot."
yeah,
There's no filter. There's nothing that holds me back because I don't suffer any consequences. You don't get in my face and say, "What do you mean I'm an idiot?" I don't have to look at you. And so it's very anonymous, and it's easy
we have
to
we have
ramp it up.
forgotten how to do real life interaction with another human being.
Yeah, to be social.
To be really social, real social, not just social on a screen.
Yeah, screaming is not being social. If I stand across, if my neighbor and I woke up every day and first thing I did is walk out to my driveway and look across the street and screamed at him, and he opened his window and said, "Right back at you, buddy." And all we did is scream at each other. We're not connecting. We're certainly not connecting. We're tearing each other apart, and we're certainly not communicating. And I think that's what I'm hearing today is the two secrets to fighting loneliness is connect. Don't
Connect.
rip apart, don't pull away, don't be alone, and to communicate. And communicating is a lost art today.
Yes. And maybe the third thing is disconnect.
Well, and that's what we'll get to in the next part of the show here. That's a perfect segue because we were all talking about how we need to connect with God, with one another, shared experience, shared conversation, communing together. I'm a Catholic, so we still go to communion where we think we're communing directly with God. For one brief moment, God's present in the host there, and in some physical or spiritual fashion. Catholics think physical, but maybe it's Lutherans think spiritual. But we're communing directly with God. You're saying the other half of the coin is maybe there are times we need to disconnect. We need to be alone. We need to shut out the noise and the stimulation. How about that?
Yes, maybe we need to, maybe in order to connect with ourselves, connect with our purpose, connect with meaning in life, maybe we need to disconnect from those things that stand as barriers.
Plug out.
Maybe
Pull the plug out.
pull the plug out. Maybe if social media and being on Facebook is causing you loneliness because you spend 12 hours a day on social media rather than interacting with another human being
In real life, yeah.
maybe you should disconnect from social media. Maybe if you're trying to fill your schedule 24 hours a day with just activities to keep busy,
Right.
rather than activities that give meaning, maybe you need to disconnect from those activities. Maybe it's better to be present rather than perfect.
Yeah. So two totally different ways. One is saying we as a society are being pushed alone. Pandemic pushed us to deal with this crisis alone. I couldn't go out and hug everybody and hold everybody and say, we'll get through this. I had to go home and gut it out by myself or with a very small group of people around me. So on the one hand, we're being pushed apart. Social media is driving us apart. Ideology is driving us apart. We're less and less feel like we have a shared experience with anybody. I'm the only one. Everybody's crazy except me. And yet, on the other hand, there maybe is a need to disconnect from this channel, to turn the channel, or disconnect, pull the plug altogether and tune out. Now, don't do it right now. We don't want you to tune out right now. Listen to the voice of God here. Do not tune out. We control the vertical. We control the horizontal. It's the outer limits here. So are those contradictory impulses? The reality is we're being atomized. We're being ripped apart into individuals. And on the other hand, maybe that's not all bad sometimes, because the more we get connected to the mob, to the wrong channel, to fake feeling of connection rather than real feeling of connection.
Fake feeling. You can have all types of fake impressions on social media, right? Before you post a picture, you would like maybe white out the wrinkles on your pictures, on your face.
We're creating fake selves. I was fascinated for a while. I don't think it's gotten the attention it did for a couple of years ago. Places like, what was it called? Second Life or something like that. These virtual worlds that you could go into, and you could be a duck. You could be a dragon. You could be a vampire. You could be anything you wanted to be. You created your little avatar and you moved through the world and you gave yourself superpowers and you did anything and everything that you want to do. And there were people who this became so real that it became like a second life, a real life to them and their friends and their interactions. Suddenly I'm powerless in real life, but I'm powerful in this video version of me. I think the same thing's true in social media. The people say it all the time, dating apps. The people present this fake image, and when they meet each other in real life, they said, "You're short, you're fat, you're old. Why didn't you tell me all this?" Or you're a man. I thought you were a woman. Oh my goodness, why are you pretending to be somebody you aren't? But that gives us some comfort. This fake version of ourselves is more comforting than easier to take than the other one. I'll give you another example. Now you got me in a roll. So we did a show a couple of years ago. There is a thing called, what the heck is it? It's a virtual assistant. I think it's called XI. I have to go look it up. And it's a harmless idea. It's the idea is that rather than you answering your emails, this virtual assistant will answer your emails. And so somebody sends you an email, and this robot, and it's a very realistic. It's artificial intelligence. It somehow reads this and has millions of possible reply. Alexa, okay, same thing on your smartphone. You can actually you have the illusion of a conversation. How are you this morning, Alexa? I'm fine. How are you? And so this robotic reply would come back. Now, here was the interesting thing. People who didn't know it was a robot, it was so realistic in its reply. Can you set up a time to meet with Dr. Trin? Sure, I can. Happy to help you. I'm here to do this. People fell in love with the robot. Marriage proposals came into the robot. Hey, we get together and have a drink? You sound like a really cool personal assistant here. I'd love to meet you. And it's like, it's a robot. It's not anybody real there, but it was so comforting in its replies.
Yes.
It created a fake connection.
Yes, that connection. And it tells us how lonely many of us are, that we would grab onto any sense of connection, whether it's a robot or not a robot. And how do we fill that gap of loneliness, right? Lewis here in the chat box wrote a little scripture verse that says, "Not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another."
There you go.
Yeah, so gathering with one another, right? Fellowship is
well, it's a bizarre. You're talking about you're talking about the good news and the bad news. You're talking about a tale of two cities. It was the worst of times. It was the best of times, as Charles Dickens wrote in his one of his famous novels. A Tale of Two Cities. Um, and that is, maybe we need to come together and physically connect and share experiences and conversations with real people, get off the
Yes,
net and get real. And at
yes,
the same time, we can't then hide our own inner loneliness by fake gatherings, fake, phony, shallow, I just go anywhere and sit at a bar.
right,
I give you another example of this. So I used to own a bar called Kelly McHugh's in Mission Viejo. It
yeah,
was kind of a Cheers-like place. That's what we envisioned.
uh,
Everybody knew your name. Everybody was glad you came. And by creating that kind of welcoming, comforting norm, sitting at the bar hours, we had people who bought into that and came for hours a day, not to get drunk, just to be with somebody. And I
wow,
found that kind of comforting, but kind of sad that there were
yes,
that many people who a bar was the only place they could come to be around people. Otherwise, they're sitting home alone, divorced, empty nest, work from home,
yes,
you name it. All those things were creating a large community of people. These are not elderly. These are
right.
not people forced to be alone. These are people through circumstances have found themselves isolated and alone, and the bar was the only place they could come out and gather.
You know, everyone communicates, but very few connect.
Yes. Oh, wow, that's deep. Say that again. I'm going to let that one sift in again. Say that one again.
Everyone communicates, but very few connect.
Yeah.
And it is in the ability to connect your soul with another soul, another human being, is where we address loneliness. It's where the problem
I
of
agree.
loneliness, issue of loneliness goes away. So it's not just communication, it's connection.
That's why I started with connection. I think if you feel
Yes,
connected to others, even if you're far apart, I'll
right,
give you another example. We've all had this happen, I think. You meet somebody you haven't seen in 20 years, your childhood friend that
right.
you've long since lost touch with, or your classmate, or somebody that moved away. And 20 years go by, and you say, and you find yourself saying, I feel like it was only yesterday. Oh my
Yes,
goodness, we're still connected. We haven't talked in 20 years, and yet
yes,
we still, so there was an unbreakable connection, probably because of some shared experience. We went through something together. We were in the war together. We were in the military together. We were in college together. We lived next door to each other once upon a time. And
right.
that connection can persist over time. Then it's a
Over time.
question of, but then we've all had that experience too, that after 10 minutes, you don't know what to say to each other. My father went through this once. He was a bomber pilot in World War II.
Right,
After the World War II ended, he went off on his way, and his little crew, who were so connected for a year, lived life and death,
right.
lost track of each other. And 50 years goes by. He's in his 80s now, or
Right.
whatever. I think he was in his 20s then. So he's now in his late 70s or 80s. And he joins some association of World War II veterans. And through this, he meets most of the member of his crew. They had all felt the need to come back and join some group. And through this thing, they all connected and they held a reunion 50
Wow.
years afterwards. None of them
Yes.
had talked in 50 years.
Yeah.
And two things struck my father that day. Three things. One, how amazingly connected he still felt to these, what he saw as young men, because of what
Hmm.
the power of what they went through. Two, how they fell into the same roles that they assumed back then. It's like they hadn't changed.
Yeah.
They called him sir. He was
Wow.
the pilot. Sir, I was 2 years older than you were. That's why they made me the pilot. You're 18 and I'm 21. So I
Hmm.
became, and they called him sir. And throughout the evening, they kept saying, what would you like to do, sir? And he's
Right.
like, quit calling me sir. You guys, one was a doctor. You make $80 million more than I do. Quit calling me sir. And then the
Right.
other thing is how after a while, because there was nothing else to talk about but the past, how they ran out of conversation.
Wow. Yes. Yes. It's amazing. Shared experiences allow a sense of trust to be developed.
Yeah,
And trust, the ability to trust another person is how we connect.
that's part of
Where
it. Yeah.
and As a matter of fact, I'm developing a course. It's more of a workshop, like a weekend workshop,
Hmm.
And this is all about trust. Actually, I've titled it the science of trust. Last year, I did an online Zoom course during in the middle of the pandemic last June,
Hmm.
when we're all stuck at home. And so I decided to create a course as on Zoom. I called it the Science of Trust.
Hmm.
It was a 6 week course, kind of fun, where we just talked about how to develop trust, the need for trust, and does trust have a formula behind it, things of that sort.
Yeah.
We had about 70 students signed up.
And what did you find? Is there a formula? Is there a science? Or it's just an art? Communication can either be a science or it can be an art. It's something that you can learn and master and teach others, a science. You can
It's
break it down
actually
into components, or it's art and it's a trade. You got to practice it over and over again until you get better at drawing the picture.
it is a little bit of both. It is a little bit of both. Have you heard the book, The Seven Habits of like
Of
Highly
highly
Successful?
successful people. Oh yeah, they talk about it all the time here. Yeah. The
So
7 things you should emulate if you want to. Here's what they
Stephen,
did. You should do the same.
so Stephen Covey
Mhm.
is the author
Right.
of that book, and Stephen Covey has a son,
Hmm.
also named Stephen Covey Jr.
Okay.
His son has a book that is I have it right in front of me actually,
Okay.
New York Times bestseller.
Okay. Stephen Covey's son, Stephen
Yes,
Covey Jr.
yes, yes, yes. Look at that.
The speed of trust. How quickly do you trust it? Yeah.
The
Wow.
speed of trust, right? The one thing that changes everything. And so I read the book last year during the pandemic, and I really enjoyed it. It is a New York Times bestseller, and yes, there is a formula. And he's written. There's a lot of pages in this book
Yeah, right.
that addresses
They
over
don't look
300
blank, so he must be saying something there.
over 300 pages that address the issue of trust, how trust can speed up the success of your business, your program,
Have you
your
ever heard of, and this is a
product.
very famous, if you've been through any acting class, I only went through a couple of elementary acting classes when I dreamed of being an actor. And one of the most fundamental things they teach you in acting class 101 is
Right,
to trust your partner, to be vulnerable, to open, and to trust. And they keep talking about, I got to trust you. And you say, what do you trust? I say the line, you say the line. I say the
right,
line, you
right.
say the line. There's no trust involved in there other than I trust you're going to say the right line and not screw up. But you have to, because to get a deeper connection where beyond the words you guys are reacting to each other and opening yourself up and being real and vulnerable. The more you do that, the more you got to trust them, because you're on stage in front of a million people. You don't want them to embarrass you. You don't want them to make it look foolish or silly.
Yes.
And so one of the most elementary tricks, maybe you've heard this before, is where they have you stand with your back
Okay.
and to fall into their arms.
Oh yes, yes. Just fall and trust that somebody's gonna grab you and catch
Somebody's
you.
going to catch you.
Fall
Try
backward.
that sometimes at
Yeah.
Hope, folks, with your wife, your friends, your loved
I
ones, your
don't know if I
trusted
trust them to
community.
I don't know if I trust them to catch me.
Yeah, nobody does. Nobody does. You all turn around and stop yourself. Is anybody really, especially when you start to feel that a feeling of falling, the
Yeah,
natural impulse is to save yourself. It is
yeah.
very hard to just let go and let God. It is very hard to
Ooh,
let go and
let go
let
and let
somebody
God.
catch you.
Very hard. So yeah, last year we did this course, right? I kind of just made it up after I read that The Speed of Trust, and it was really neat. By the end of 6 weeks, we all had like some aha moments, including myself, on what it takes to build trust, what it takes to break trust. How do you develop trust, right? How do you communicate to develop trust? So anyway, all that to say that I'm developing a workshop for a weekend, once the pandemic's over and we feel a little bit better meeting at
Yeah.
a hotel somewhere. I'm
Well,
gonna
put
launch
in
this.
that actor's trick, because that's a way to an example to bring it to life. You say you trust your spouse, then close your eyes and
Fall
fall
backward.
backwards into their arms and see what happens.
Oh, maybe I'll try that later. Except I'm not sure if anyone in my family can actually catch me I may break a bone.
Yeah, well, that's why you do it next to a pillow or some, put some
Hello,
pillows on the
that.
ground in case you fall. And but that assumption that they are going
Yeah,
to catch you is that's blind faith. That's trust.
blind faith.
Religious organizations should do this. You want to trust in God that there's a God, then fall backwards and see if anybody catches you.
Ooh, yes, yes.
And I'm
That
going to suggest that this is a future episode, that we've just teased another episode here of trust,
yeah,
because all of these things go to the heart of what this show is. You came up at the epiphany like a little child sending a letter to Santa. We
yeah,
suddenly discovered people really do this. Alcoholics do this. People who journal do this, like you did in the military. There is
yes,
some real power in writing something down that we'll talk about as we go along, and putting it out there and declaring something to the world. I believe this to be true, or to
right.
yourself. But a lot of that is at the core of this. Is anybody out there? Will anybody catch me? And then the trust that they will.
Will God catch me?
Yeah.
Right. In whatever situation I'm in, right, in the dilemma I'm in the trial and turbulence I'm in, can I leap out in faith and will God catch me?
I'm not as faithful as I try to be. I'm not sure I had a parachute.
A parachute and God, right?
And God, yeah, I'll trust you, God, but I'm gonna have a backup plan. I
You
gotta
know,
have, yeah,
during this pandemic, I've ran across a few believers that say, I'm not going to take the vaccine. I don't trust it.
yeah.
I'm just going to trust in God.
And that to me is, at some point, I've heard that too. That's complete trust. God will provide every day. I don't have to work. God will provide food for me. I don't have to take a driving class. Jesus will take the wheel. Um, you know, as the song said, the Carrie Underwood song, Jesus take the wheel.
Yes.
I think at some point, and I keep saying there is a Bible verse that says God helps those who help themselves. At some point, you have
Is
to
that a
be
Bible verse that says that?
must
I
be.
don't know. I gotta look that up.
God, I say at some point, and that's a whole nother show here. What point does personal responsibility kick in? At what point
Yes.
do you have to take the wheel, or is our relationship with God or our family or our faith so absolute that we have to do not, all we have to do is trust and everything else happens for us? Or do we have
Okay.
to take a role in
Yes.
making it
Well, I
happen?
usually tell these folks, do you believe that God gave us medicine? Like when you get pneumonia, do you just pray to God,
Yeah,
or do you take an antibiotic
right,
and pray to God?
right, exactly. That's a good point. So there you go. So God did answer your request. God did provide for you. He gave you a vaccine. You're assuming that He's going to reach into your body and take the antibody out. And if God were here, you and I would argue, God would say, I already gave you the answer. It's the vaccine. Take it. I
If you
I
had
I
if you had
gave you
breast
what you're
if
looking
you had
for.
breast cancer, would you sit there and just say, I'm not going to do anything because God's going to take care of me? Or would you go to your surgeon to remove it?
Not if you were a Christian Scientist. You would
Ooh,
pray it away. And that's why they don't believe in surgery or going to
I
doctors
didn't know that.
yeah, go look up the essence of Christian. I forgot her name, Mary Eddy or something. Her name created this, that it is the test of your faith. And the minute you succumb to the ways of the world, you're not trusting in God,
The
essentially.
moment you go see a doctor, it's lack of trust.
Yeah, and so all the time you see people who are dying of something who could otherwise live, and they die because they're Christian Scientists, and you just didn't pray hard enough, you just didn't believe hard enough. Or those who who believe that they can convert some essence of themselves. If you think you feel
Yeah.
homosexual urges, all you have to do is pray it away, think it away. The power of positive thinking. I can make anything go away if I just simply believe it, and
Right,
and
right.
and so
I
that's, yeah,
Yeah, I'm a big believer in praying, obviously, due to our faith, but also with common sense. right? And so there
And you
needs
hit
to
the answer. So I'm expecting God to come and reach into my body and remove this. Maybe the answer God's giving us is, I gave you medicine. I gave you a doctor. There is the answer right there. You want me to do it for you. I want you to take a step and trust me and trust in medicine and trust in that which I have
given you.
given you, shown to the world.
Yes.
If there was enlightenment in that creation of that in science, where did that enlightenment come from? Was it just accidental or was it divine inspiration? I don't know.
All good points with that.
Well, we're back to where we started. Are we alone? And if we are, is that good or bad?
And are we alone versus are we feeling lonely?
Yes. Right.
You can be surrounded by people and feel lonely,
Right.
or you can be alone and yet not feel alone because you are connected,
That's right.
right, with a
With
higher being, with God, with family.
yeah.
And so
Interesting.
maybe there's a difference between being alone and being lonely.
Well, we're going to continue to explore this because this isn't a once and done conversation. This is the core of what it is. Is anybody out there listening? Am I connected to anybody beyond myself? And if I'm not, if there is nobody else, then how do I not feel alone and the isolation and all the well, what happens when you do feel alone? We'll talk about that. The physical consequences, the medical consequences of being really, I'm completely on my own. That's not a
That's all.
good psychological or physical thing for humans. And at the same time, then so you create the false illusion. I'm on social media, I'm in a crowd, I'm always at a party, I'm never alone, I've always got a pretty girl in my arm, whatever it is that you do to create the illusion to yourself that you're not alone, when in
Mhm.
fact the pretty girl doesn't care about you. She just, how much money have you got or whatever, you're
Yeah.
just fake friends. We all surround ourselves, have a certain number of fake friends or people at work that just tell you whatever you want to hear. You're the boss. Oh, you're great, you're wonderful. And so you think, boy, I'm connected, and these people aren't connected to you at all. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Great thoughts to ponder.
Yes.
Don't have an answer to everything, but at least we can ask and discuss and chat.
And we still got to get people to put up their thoughts. I want this to be a graffiti wall. That's what I
Yes,
hope.
yes, yes. I'll create I'll create an opportunity to do a graffiti wall.
Yeah.
In these Facebook pages, only the administrator can actually post, and
Oh,
other yeah, and
then
other
we got to do that differently. So we can just, anybody can, it should be a graffiti wall where I can put up my something
uh,
funny or a prayer or a request
yes,
or my letter to God.
yes. So I will make that happen in a sense where we can have an initial post and people can comment
Yeah.
under that post, so we can do a graffiti wall. This is fun. We're gonna develop this over time.
All right. Appreciate the opportunity. It's a fascinating conversation. It's the core of where we are as a society here. Americans are, as your Dr. Grove kept pointing out, we're fanatically individual, but we become so individual that we become alone.
Yes. Let's close out here with a comment from Louis Jonas here
Okay.
in our Facebook. And Louis says, Paul, that is so true. We have so many options other than God. In third world countries, they don't have many options that we do. This is why miracles are more evident, so much more
Mm,
than the West. And then he ends with
interesting.
a verse here. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight.
All,
Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6.
all things to ponder and do. It's hard for me to surrender. It's hard for me to believe what I can't see. It's hard for me to accept. I always think I got to take no, Jesus, don't take the wheel. I got this one. And yet there are all moments in our life when we say, help, I can't handle this anymore. I need a higher power. Alcoholics. I start by the first assumption is I can't, I guess I realize I can't handle this alone.
Yes. Great session today, Paul.
All right, good stuff. Talk to
Good
you
stuff.
next time on Letters to God.